Guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. I appreciate you guys coming. As always, those of you that are the regulars on Site Council, I appreciate you guys coming, always giving your feedback and insight into Nike. Tonight's a little different. Tonight is our chance. Dr. Huff, our superintendent, and some of the other people from board office are here to talk about some things that they're considering looking at in the future here as we look at, obviously most all of you know that they're moving Sunflower, building a new school out there and making an early childhood center. So they're just going to talk about some of the things that they're going to go through when they're thinking about these things. And so this is a time, and I'm sure Dr. Huff will say this, for you guys just to gather some information, but also to ask questions. It may not just be a question you have, but maybe you know your neighbor has that question or somebody else. So feel free. This is the only thing on the agenda tonight. So don't have to worry about talking too much, thinking that you're not going to get out of here in time. We'll get you out of here. So I'm going to turn over to Dr. Huff and let him do his thing and go from there.
Yes. All right. Thanks for taking some time to come and help us out today, and appreciate the time for Nike to put this together for us. So, a while back we did pass a bond issue that, amongst a lot of other things, allowed us to build an elementary school. Building the elementary school is going to necessitate that we change boundaries. That's, changing where everybody goes to school. So, we're going to go over some of the details of what that process looks like tonight, but I want you to keep in mind the big thing we want is feedback from you. Because we can prioritize certain aspects of developing what those boundaries look like, but we need to hear what's important to you. And as you tell us those things, we'll be able to put together a good idea of what that process does look like. And we have two of our board members here tonight, Julie and Tom, and they're going to be charged with making some big decisions around this. So they represent you all. You're going to give them a lot of your input as to what this looks like. And as Jody's going to go through a lot of the details here, we're going to have a meeting in April for the board to decide what sort of priorities we're going to set forth as we decide what the boundaries look like. We have a lot of steps ahead of us. No decisions being made tonight. This is just a feedback night, and it's also to give an opportunity to give you all an idea of what some of the parameters are and what some of our ideas are as we move forward. So I'll turn it over to Jody to give us some details, and then we're going to come back and do a lot of question answer and talk a little bit about what kind of our next steps are. So, Jody Marshall.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Brian said, I'm Jody Marshall. Excuse me. I'm one of the assistant superintendents here in the district. I've had the good fortune to work in this district for 22 years as a special ed administrator, and then in HR, and then a few years here now as the assistant soup. And during that time, I've had the good fortune to work in all of our buildings, including Nike, and I know how wonderful it is. And so, as Brian said, part of the reason we're here, well, one of the big reasons we're here tonight or this afternoon is to get input from you, but it's also to reassure you that we're going to take care of Nike through this process, okay? Because we know it's a wonderful building, wonderful kids, wonderful staff, wonderful leadership, and we want to keep it that way, okay? So I hope you hear that message as well as we talk through things this afternoon. So I did give you a couple handouts. I draw your attention to this one that has a lot of writing on it. It's a kind of an agenda. I just want to go through the items on here, and then there's some maps and things that we can look at as reference as well. So kind of the agenda here, I want to talk about why we're doing this now. Then I want to touch on what the priorities might be as the board tries to develop the new boundaries, and then let's spend a little time talking about the process. So the why now, Brian's kind of already talked about that. We passed a bond, and that's obviously going to include a new elementary school and a preschool center. And so that is an opportune time to redo boundaries. I will tell you, even if we didn't pass a bond, we needed to redo boundaries. If you've been in the community and you know some of our other buildings, you know there's an elementary, Madison, that's been sitting at pretty close to capacity for the last several years. And one of our middle schools, Trail Ridge, has got quite a few more students than Wheat Ridge and Pioneer Ridge. So we really needed to rearrange boundaries and balance enrollment even without the bond projects. So it was probably overdue, to be honest with you. Brian talked a little bit about capacity. We're growing. You live in the community, you're driving around, you see the houses going up, you see the growth. So we need to plan ahead. When buildings get to capacity, it's too late. You need to be thinking years ahead, and that's kind of what we're doing here, is trying to think ahead and allow our community to grow into our buildings as well. So how are we going to go through this? Again, the heavy work's going to be done by the Board of Education and a boundary committee, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But the board needs to talk through and set some priorities for establishing these new boundaries. So Brian mentioned a work session in April. So the Board of Education is going to have an actual work session on April 27th. We've got a consulting firm that's going to help us through this. The consulting firm is RSP. They've been a great partner with us for the last 10 or 12 years. This is what they do. But they're going to guide the Board of Education through a work session to set these priorities. It's going to be an open session. They're just going to talk through it and look at what are the things we need to consider when we redo these boundaries. If you look at the handout that I've shared, you can see some of the usual suspects. These are things that you would typically see a school district consider when they redo boundaries. You want to reduce the overall impact, so that's where you start from. We want to have the least amount of impact on all of our buildings that we can in the new boundaries. We want to balance enrollment. As I said, we've got some buildings that have a lot more capacity and some that are near capacity. Going back to the elementary example, Madison has over 500 kiddos. Edgerton Elementary has about 130. We're not going to ship all of our kids out to Edgerton. Don't take what I'm saying to believe that, but we have buildings with different levels of enrollment. The neighborhood concept, that's a hallmark of our district, having schools where the kids in the neighborhood go to a school. Nike would be probably one of the exceptions, but we're starting to get that neighborhood feel with some of the developments behind the building here. Talked about needing capacity. When we redo boundaries, we want them to endure. We don't want to be going through that process every 3 or 4 years. It is a somewhat disruptive process, so we want to try to avoid that. So we want boundaries that will last 5, 7, 8, 10 years. Okay? We also want to be mindful of our specialized programs. We've got wonderful specialized programs. I'm talking about our special ed programs and programs like our ELL programs. Those kids that are in those programs together in elementary, we want to try to make sure they go together to middle school. Okay? Staffing patterns, we have an obligation to be efficient with our staffing, so that will be factored in. And then our demographer, our planner, will look at what's going on in the community, residential, commercial development, and try to help us kind of see the future there as well. And then we want to make sure there's a process in here to address hardships or special circumstances. The board will probably consider some grandfathering. If your child's a 3rd grader, they might be able to stay in their building through 4th grade. If your child's a 7th grader, maybe remaining in the middle school through 8th grade. Not promising you that will happen, but that's not uncommon for the board to consider that and bake that kind of in to the process as well. And then finally, I put a bullet point on here that even if we think of all those things, we discuss all those things, we make all those things priorities, and we put those into our proposals for new boundaries, there's no such thing as perfect boundaries. We know this is going to impact children and families, but we're, again, going to do our level best to account for all of this, or as much of this as we can when we come out with new boundaries. Okay? Any questions on that? Brian will probably touch on some possible other priorities here that we've heard from other buildings when we've gone out and done these presentations. We've had some really good questions. People have said, well, what about these priorities, like not crossing the railroad tracks or not crossing a major road? So Brian will probably touch on those here in a second. So the actual process, I'd ask you to turn over that one page and you'll see a diagram. It's got a bunch of colored boxes. This is a draft, but I'm pretty confident the process will actually look very much like this. Essentially, it's going to be a multi-step, comprehensive, scientific process, and it's going to be very transparent. It's going to be a full public view. So all the meetings, all the work sessions are going to be open meetings, so the community can follow along as much or as little as they want. All the data that we consider, all the information we consider will be put on our website. So again, community members, parents can get in there and root around kind of in the data and see what data we're using and considering in the process. Brian will give routine updates in his monthly newsletters and an open session at our board meetings. So again, a lot of opportunities for folks to kind of play along and pay attention to what we're doing. And then the actual committee, the board will talk about this at the April 27th work session. They'll talk about the composition of the actual committee. So if you flip back to the diagram, the committee work is represented by these green boxes here. So the actual work committee will get together and have work sessions. So there'll probably be 3 or 4 of those as they get closer and closer to developing some recommendations for the Board of Education. So who will actually be on this work committee, this boundary committee? So again, the board will kind of set that. But if you look at the handout I've given you, there's some, again, kind of the usual suspects. Obviously, you're going to have a representative group of parents on the committee. Probably going to look to get some patrons, maybe some retirees or business owners in the community. We're definitely going to make sure our classified and certified staff are represented on this committee. We're going to invite officials from the city of Edgerton and the city of Gardner to participate. And then, of course, we'll have a representative, 2 or 3 board members on the committee. And building leadership will have some input, but we're not going, building and district leadership is really not going to be on the committee. We're just going to be there to facilitate the process, share information, provide data, answer questions, things like that. Other opportunities for the community to be involved, there's going to be public forums. That'll probably look like we go to the gymnasium one afternoon or one evening, we do a presentation, and then there's an open mic. People can ask questions. There'll be a back and forth. So again, the community can participate in that way. And then my guess is we'll send a survey out to every parent in the district with a handful of questions about the boundaries. So again, lots of opportunities to participate on a kind of a one-off basis or to try to get involved in this actual committee. So what does all this lead to? If you flip back again to the diagram, all this leads to giving the Board of Education some recommended proposals. My guess it will be more than one, but it probably won't be 3 or 4. So this boundary work committee will come up with a couple of recommendations. They'll present it to the board probably in December of 2026. The board will let it kind of sit there for a month while they process it and the community processes it. And then the following January or February, they will formally adopt new boundaries. Okay, so they'll be out there for a few months. Give the leadership team an opportunity to interact with some of the buildings that are going to be largely impacted by it. Give our staff and parents an opportunity to kind of examine it and digest it. And then we'll roll those out to become effective August 2027 when we open the new elementary. Okay, so that's just the process kind of on paper, guys, as we see it unfolding. I think it's important to pay attention to this Monday night's board meeting. Our planner is going to come in and give us an updated analysis of our enrollment. That's important data for the process I just talked about. And in that April 27th meeting, it's very important to pay attention to that because the board's going to decide a great deal. And after that meeting, it's really going to pick up speed. There'll be a little downtime over the summer, but then we'll come back in August and this process will go very quickly. Okay? And then you also got a handout with just an idea of kind of what our boundaries are now and kind of, again, what we'll be looking at. Obviously, the new boundaries will change the configurations, but that's what we'll put out to the public. Okay, I'll stop there.
Well, I'll jump in and add a few other things.
Okay?
So one of the issues that comes up fairly regularly when we start talking about what's going on in the future of the district that I wanted to address also. Questions come up about the second high school. What are we going to do about this high school that's full of kiddos? First off, your kids are all on the trajectory, obviously, to go to it. It is not over full. It's a big high school with a lot of kids in it, and it actually feels very good. And the board had very good insight as to what to do right now with the school, which really, the place that you see that kind of, where it feels full is in the cafeteria during lunch. It's hard to serve all those kids lunch, and so we are updating the cafeteria so that we have better serving areas, larger, more capacity in the serving areas, and a more efficient serving area. But as far as the building itself, it's able to handle as many students are there plus some. And we're gonna listen to the community. You all are gonna tell us, when is it time for a second high school? And so this past bond issue, we heard back that we are very happy with the one high school town. We love being able to do well on Friday nights with football, and that's fine, that's good. We love having the programs that are available, all fine and good. At some point in time, the community will tell us it's time for a second high school. We are at least 10 years away from that. We won't have the bonding capacity to be able to build another high school for another 10 years. Now, in 10 years, we will have the bonding capacity. The board has also had the forethought to be ready. So we have land for a second high school right now. We'll be ready when the community's ready. And my projection is that the community's gonna be ready when moms are upset that their kids aren't getting on the field, because there's still only gonna be 5 kids on the basketball court, and there's gonna be twice as many kids going out when the school gets too big. And moms are gonna say, you know, that's not very fair, and we're probably gonna look at a second high school then. But you all will tell us. The community will tell us when it's time. For right now, though, we are looking at the boundaries, and we do recognize this as an emotional issue. And we want you to give us the feedback about that. We do have heard so far that it's important to have neighborhood schools. Now, Nike's kind of an odd duck when it comes to that. We don't have a neighborhood school here. Although we seem to be gaining traction with the neighborhood right by. It would be nice if they built a little faster so we can have more of a neighborhood, but maybe we can get the overpass done so it's, feels a little more connected and we don't have difficulty getting here, as 2 of our staff members found today even. And you're gonna see a lot of cool things going on around Nike. One of the things that we do a good job of is staying with the projected plans for the community. And so right across the street, right across Gardner Road, you're going to see a lot of that work getting done. You're starting to see it get done now. As the overpass gets done, there's a big project going in over there. So housing as well as commercial development. There's a lot of housing that's going on across Gardner and across Edgerton. And part of what our demographer is helping us do is project what that means for kids for us. And what we're starting to see is that as these houses are going in, we are seeing kiddos, but the birth rate also is reduced. And so even though we have more kids coming in with the housing, we're not getting as many young families that are coming in and that are bringing children with them. I'm glad we have a future Nike kiddo here probably, so that's good. We want to see more of that. And so we do want to keep looking towards the future and being ready for the future. So we've heard neighborhood schools. We've also heard that there are some fears about, those maps are full of personalized information. And the first thing you did when you received that map today is you looked for yourselves. You found your place. And that's what you're going to do when we have these first maps that come out. You're going to look at how does this impact you? And how does this impact your kids' friends? We want to be very sensitive to that. But I also want to reassure you that we do have, as Jody mentioned, a lot of great schools here. And if you find that you're in that place where you are being moved to a different building, there's a couple things that are important in that. One is your kid's not going by themselves. They're going to go with a group of people right around them. So they're probably going to know a good number of kids that go with them. And the other thing to keep in mind is that kids are really resilient. And I can almost guarantee you, a couple months into the school year, we couldn't pry you out of that new building because you're going to love it too. You're going to love the teachers there. You're going to love the principal there. You're going to love the whole process of being there. We take great pride in that. And so we want to help you through that process. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We've talked a lot at you. What sorts of feedback and questions do you have for us? What have we missed?
Where's the new elementary going?
Okay, the new elementary is going just south of Pioneer Ridge.
Okay.
And I tell you what, it is cool to go see how fast they're working. So there's already a lot of groundwork that's been done, and they're starting to see some columns go up.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll dive into the specialized programs a little bit. Jody had mentioned it. The new elementary school is going to be substantially larger than Sunflower. So it's going to give us a lot of additional classroom space to move kiddos around. Sunflower doesn't really have a specialized program right now. I mean, they do and they don't, but we're going to have an opportunity probably to have more space for a larger specialized program at the new elementary school. And so that is going to necessitate that sort of conversation as well. But even then, we're going to listen to the parents. We're going to listen to our community members. We aren't going to make these kind of decisions in a vacuum. And so we want you to be thinking about what is important to you. What we've heard a lot of is that we want our kids to stay together. And so purity of the feeder program has been something that's come up over and over again. So not just with our specialized programs, but also with our kids in general. Right now, Moonlight splits between 2 middle schools. That doesn't feel very good. And you'd like your kids to stay with their friend group all the way through middle school and into high school, right? Maybe we can do that. But the board's got to take that list of priorities and then decide what's going to be important. I'll give you an example. The demographer may come up with a map that says, okay, the number 1 priority is purity of feeder programs. Okay, here's the map where we have a pure feeder program. Keeping in mind we have 7 elementary schools going into 3 middle schools. The math doesn't quite work, does it? So let's say they do that. But then when they do that, the middle schools are imbalanced because we have a different number of schools going to a different number of buildings. Maybe one of the priorities we have is to have a balanced number of kids at all 3 of our middle schools. And so we have conflicting issues there. Or maybe in having the purity, it creates an imbalance in our socioeconomic status, our level of poverty or not poverty at our schools. And maybe that's an important aspect that we need to consider. And so these priorities can act in conflict with each other. These two are going to work with the other board members in determining which ones are going to take priority, and we're going to listen to you all as you give feedback to us. Does that make sense? I know it wasn't what you asked, and I kind of went off on a tangent. What other questions? Concerns, things you want us to hear? What priorities jump off the page at you that you want these board members to hear about?
We can prime the pump a little bit with some of the questions or concerns we heard at the other buildings. One of the common questions is which building is going to be most impacted, and again, it's going to depend. But I also think if you live in the community and you kind of think back to what I said, you can kind of logically, Sunflower obviously is because we're converting it to a preschool center, but also Madison and also Trail Ridge. So again, we don't want people to get too anxious about that, but there are some, just I think, common sense. I know the community answers to that. So that's one thing that's come up. And then as Brian was saying, the demographer is going to come in with some of those priorities again baked in, like not having kids cross Main Street too much or the railroad tracks. So it's not going to be a completely blank slate, but beyond that, it's largely going to be up to the board to decide those priorities that we talked about. And again, they're going to respond to the community input, so that's why it's so important for you to ask the questions and point out your priorities. Another common question is, what about interdistrict transfer request? If I don't like the boundaries, can I put in a transfer request and go to another building or stay where I'm at? And again, we're going to consider true hardships. We do that as a district now. If the family demonstrates true hardship, there's a reason to make an exception, then we'll probably grant that. But otherwise, it defeats the purpose to redo boundaries if we're going to let parents just kind of pick and choose where they go. So there's probably going to be some compassionate no's. We're not going to allow transfers in the district. Sorry.
How do you define a true hardship?
That's a case-by-case thing, and so, again, some of this goes back to, is there a sibling maybe in a specialized program that's in a building, and I'd like, one of my children is in a special ed program, and I'd like my other kiddos a grade older to stay in that building, or help me as a parent, getting to know a building, transportation. Again, I'm not saying that's the perfect example, but that would be, I think, an example we've encountered before, and we've tried to be supportive.
Case by case basis, absolutely.
What's the population of Trail Ridge in comparison to Pioneer and Wheat Ridge?
It's got the sheet.
Where's Trail Ridge? Trail Ridge has 679 students currently, and their capacity is 925. Wheat Ridge has 481, and Pioneer has 563. So if you guys know the community, you know Pioneer Ridge and Trail Ridge, they're the same footprint, so their capacity is the same, 925. Wheat Ridge, great big old funky building, we love it. It's got a little bit more capacity, but we don't want to fill any of these buildings up to capacity because once you get to that point, it's too late. But we do have, in my opinion, ample capacity in our middle schools. But again, we've got one building with quite a few more students, so.
Yeah.
And they do a great job serving those kids, and they do it well. But it is a management issue like lunchtime and activities and transitions. So again, can we relieve some of that pressure?
Is ESL considered a specialized program? Is that,
Yes.
are Wheat Ridge and Trail Ridge both ESL or just Trail Ridge?
Just
Trail Ridge.
Western Trail
And
Ridge.
say, that might be a big part of that
Yes,
as
that would
well.
help.
What's ESL?
Sorry, English is a second language.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it.
So Brian pointed out there was a concerted effort 2 years ago to really establish pure feeder, a feeder system for our specialized programs. So a lot of thought went into that. And that's another common question, well, are you guys gonna, and Brian's spoken to this, are you going to be able to honor that, keep it intact? And that's a high priority, because we know continuity is so important for those kids, and we also want our staff to enjoy that continuity and stay together in a building, right?
You mentioned earlier, like, we're not planning on shipping everybody to Edgerton. Is that a discussion of busing some children from
So
Gardner
let
to
me,
Edgerton?
I'll address that, and we had Edgerton last night, so yesterday. And yeah, we're gonna have to reduce at Madison and increase at Edgerton. Those are the two extremes, and we do need to prioritize that. But we also have a lot of building going on, and the timing is gonna work out pretty nicely. Dwyer Farms, about 300 houses that are being built in Edgerton. And then on the west side of Gardner and then towards Edgerton, several neighborhoods are going in. At the corner of 199th Street and Sunflowers as you drive into Edgerton. On the right, on the left is the big white fancy house, for Johnson County. And on the right, there's an empty field there. That's going to be developed into multifamily housing, think duplexes, townhomes, as well as strip mall kind of stuff. And so more housing there. There was also housing at 175th and Four Corners. So the southeast corner of that intersection, about 400 houses going in there. There's another 200 houses going in just east of there on 175th Street, just west of the old small airport, not the New Century one. So that helps. And, part of the big discussion last time we looked at boundaries was a housing development close to Madison that was going to be sent out to Edgerton. And the community said no. And so the board backed off of that, built 2 classrooms out of Madison and just increased the size. We do have to consider some folks going to Edgerton. But it's not going out to Wichita or anything.
Yeah.
It's about a 6-minute drive from that neighborhood to Edgerton, but it still feels
Different community.
difficult. So, yes and no, and I get there's hesitation. Edgerton is an amazing school. And so I wonder at why there's a hesitation there. I get it, folks have it. But they're a blue ribbon school. It's an amazing school. So, to better answer your question, I don't know that we're going to have to dive into a current neighborhood, but we might. And that's going to be part of what they're going to decide. Because what you're getting at, and Edgerton had the same question, is if you get too far away, you lose the neighborhood feel as well. And so Edgerton also wants to have people that are involved in their community, the community of their school. If you go too far, then you lose that. And so there will be a balance with that. The nice thing is Edgerton is it's a smaller building, so it's gonna have to be smaller anyway. It's smaller than, it'll be the smallest as far as classroom capacity goes. So we'll just have to wait and see what that looks like. But I would imagine that the bulk of the growth for them is gonna be taken up by the current and future developments that are planned out that direction anyway. Does that help? Yeah, and so I tell you, even one development that's not there yet, I mean, I don't think it'd be part of Edgerton, but you're right next to the brand new elementary school to the west. So another development of about 400 houses going in. It would make sense, they'd be a neighborhood school, but there'd also be the new side that would be closer to Edgerton. Tough choice, but it would be tough to send them out there when they could walk to the other building, you know? So, does that help?
I don't love the idea of my kid having to be bused to a different community. I did that when I was younger. I did,
Sure,
you know.
sure.
So
Well-
I have reservations about it, so,
Every
I
kid-
mean, your answer is sufficient. I just
Every
don't
kid's
like the
bust
idea.
here, you know? I'm curious now, are you out that direction where you think you might be?
No, we live very close to Nike. If I have issues with it, I'm sure that other parents that are gonna be affected have issues with it, so I just wanted to voice.
Yeah,
my
I would
concern.
say that the neighborhoods we're talking about are getting bust anyway. Most likely.
It was a good point made by one of the Edgerton parents. It's not just that my kiddo's being bussed out there, it's that I work in Olathe, I work in Overland Park, and every morning I'm going the other way, or every night, you know, I don't wanna go all the way out there to participate in
I think
activities
you
or
have a lot
whatever.
less parent involvement if you have
And that
partner
was the
parents
point they were
that
making.
are trying to.
Yeah.
They made that exact point, and we wanna hear that, and so what I summarized back to them is, I hear you wanna have neighborhood schools, and so as much as possible, we wanna have neighborhood schools. But we also have if you look at the map, Edgerton's attendance boundaries are ridiculous. It's just like half the district goes, because it's this whole rural area that's undeveloped so far.
You know, very few things stimulate community parent input into public schools as much as redoing boundaries. And I don't want to speak for the board, but we welcome that, we really do. And I think that they do too. And so it is important whether you try to get onto this actual committee and we can kind of talk about what that might look like a little bit, or you send us emails or you fill out the survey. We want your input and we want you to spread the word, because you have neighbors that didn't come tonight. So we want to make sure you spread the word and encourage that. I mean, we're being sincere, that's what we want.
And we hear less busing is better. What other questions, concerns, input?
I'll just give my opinion, not that it, you know.
Well, that's why we're here.
Just my opinion. So, I have a unique experience that I've been an Edgerton Elementary parent that went to Pioneer Ridge and a Nike Elementary parent that has gone to Trail Ridge. So I will give props to Edgerton Elementary. It's really amazing. And at one point in time, I don't know if this still stands true, but their test scores were actually above some of the schools in Gardner. So like truly, they have staff there, all of them, okay. So like they have staff there that's amazing, that are long-term. So if anybody ever has to end up at Edgerton Elementary, you're gonna be in great hands. Now, I'm not gonna tell you where I live because I wanna keep going down. I will be the first transfer
We're writing
request
this down.
you receive. Yes, because I wanna stay where I'm at, but it is really wonderful. But I will say, the transition from Edgerton Elementary to Nike Edgerton to Pioneer, fairly seamless. The transition for me as a parent from Nike to Trail Ridge,
It's so bad.
so bad. And
So bad.
I appreciate the information because now I'm understanding that there's a capacity issue, so that's great. But as a parent, I can feel it. It is incredibly different, and it is a struggle. Just a brief example, I sent an email to my child's teacher recently and it took a week and a half to receive a response about her education. And I think that's kind of a failure on her part, my daughter's part, you know? So I think I like the.
Failure on your daughter's part.
Well, like it's a failure to her because this was regarding her education. It was important data. And so I just want it to be known, like I would love to see whatever we need to do to get maybe Trail Ridge's capacity down so that the teachers maybe aren't feeling that so much.
So, and I'll
Yeah.
address that. It really has nothing to do with the teacher.
Mhm.
Because even though we have more kids at Trail Ridge, we also have more staff at Trail Ridge. And so the kids per class
Mhm.
is not different.
Yeah.
Our expectations are not different.
Mhm.
It's what I would encourage you all, if you're finding this, we have, did that booth leave?
Took a phone call, yeah, he's.
Good.
Yeah. Also, we're very spoiled here.
Perfect time.
Like this is just.
And middle school is different from elementary, but we do expect our teachers to reply and to be sensitive to the communication of the parents, yes. And so what I would encourage you, if you're finding this to be an issue, to talk to one of the assistant principals, or calling the teacher, or the principal, at whatever building you're talking about, because our expectations don't change. And so capacity does not impact that.
Okay.
Capacity difference between the two buildings, you're gonna see a difference in number of lunch shifts, number of kids in the hall. We're utilizing spaces at Trail Ridge that are not needing to be used at Pioneer Ridge, just as an example. So,
And
the
I like-
expectations are
yeah.
the same.
Okay, that's good to know. And I like the idea of feeder schools because I enjoy like I get to know the parents here and when I like my daughter going to school with the same kids, so,
It makes it more comfortable.
yeah, so.
And I'll extend the issue of capacity to the high school. Almost 1,800 kids there. Our students in classes is still 20. I mean, you're not gonna see a big difference in class sizes. There's just a lot more classes. And if you're like my wife, you walk the halls of the high school, you're like, I have no idea where anything is here. The place is intimidating. She graduated with 50 kids in her class, and so I get that. That the building can feel intimidating, but when you get into the classroom with the teacher, class sizes are not big.
Yeah, class sizes is something we try to be very transparent about, and we try to support our staff, and we do a presentation every year in October where we show the average class sizes at every grade level in every building, and post-COVID, it's lower than it was pre-COVID.
Okay.
So Brian's spot on there. Show of hands, how many people have actually been to Edgerton Elementary School? Okay, what she said is exactly right, it is a wonderful place. But so is Nike, all of our elementaries are. I think the parents out at Edgerton would like to keep it a secret.
Stop talking about us.
Yeah.
But it's reflective of all of our elementaries. I'm gonna jump into something that I kind of glossed over in my ramblings there. I didn't really talk about the size of the committee and maybe how people can get on it. There's an art to probably forming a committee to do this kind of work, and it needs to be more than 4 or 5 people, right? But it can't be 90 people. So again, the board will kind of set the parameters on who's going to be invited to participate in the committee. The hardest thing is probably going to be figuring out who the parents are, because we're going to have more interested parents than we probably can have on the committee. So I don't know how they're going to define the application process, what that's going to look like. We have talked internally, we'd like to give folks that are on the PTA, PTO, site council, maybe some bonus points, if you will, and get some additional consideration, because you're already invested, right? You're already doing some of the hard work and you're already supporting the building. Having said that, again, this is something maybe you could spread the word for us. If you're going to be on the committee, you need to be there for the whole truckload. You need to be there for the first meeting, you need to be there for the 4th meeting. Because we've done some other big initiatives in the past where we lose people along the way, and that just undermines the process a little bit. So we need folks that can, as much as possible, commit to the whole process.
What else on your mind?
I want to just jump in because I don't know if maybe it's just me reflecting. There's been a lot of talk about Edgerton. I don't think there's any movement that we're moving people from Nike to Edgerton.
No.
That's not any.
Well, we don't wanna make any promises.
Yeah.
You don't want to confuse people.
I just don't want anybody leaving here
No.
thinking, well, they're sending us to Edgerton. That's not the case.
I just wanted to voice the concern, because
Yeah.
I'm sure other parents that live there feel the same.
Well,
I just don't want anyone going home thinking, well, we don't
you can generally look at the map and get a pretty good idea about what the most logical routes are. So, but no promises.
Nike parents are gonna jump in their car tomorrow, drive out to Edgerton and ask for a tour of the building. Probably not.
Oh, well. What else? Well, we don't want the wait time to become uncomfortable. And we do appreciate all the time you have given us. We're available. Let us know if there's something that you want to talk about outside of here. Send us an email. Ask us to come out. Something crops up, you hear something. I mean, you know, typically CFG is a good place to get your information. But if that comes up with a question that you would need an answer to, we are way open. Give us a call. Okay, we'll help you out. Which is actually where my input of the high school stuff came, because there's all kinds of interesting theories about the high school. Believe it or not, CFG is not a great place to find your facts.
Agree, Brian, thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.
Let us, contact us anytime, but I would encourage you to pay attention to that April 27th meeting, okay?
Sorry, one more quick question, just in case anyone's interested in applying for the committee. Is that gonna be sent out via email on what that application list process looks like, or?
Go back to what I just said, really pay attention to the April 27th meeting, because they'll set some of those ground rules, and then the district leadership team will start getting the word out, the applications out after that. Again, that's when it's really gonna pick up speed, so pay attention to that meeting, if you can attend or watch it, and then watch our website after that.
Multiple avenues, and I'd say that probably the primary one that you can almost be guaranteed is my newsletter that comes out, because it'll have links to the agenda for the board meeting as well as updates as to what we have going on, but yeah, multiple sources. Social media.
Again, I can't stress enough, even if you're not on the committee, all this work's gonna be done in the public. So you can largely come to the meetings and activities, and you can certainly keep up with it on the website.
You all being here is a good sign that you're committed, and so we've said this to a few other meetings too. This is a committed group just because you're here. You know, there's a lot more parents than what are here tonight, so thank you very much for participating. You all good evening.
Thank you.